Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a beer from Masthead Brewing Company out of Cleveland, Ohio. We've had a few beers from them over the years, all of which I have gotten from Tavour. Today's is no exception, and today's beer is called Life Cycles. It is a bourbon barrel-aged barley wine that clocks in at 14.2% ABV. Now, I am quite fortunate to right now be sitting on somewhere between 10 and 12 barley wines in my possession. So fellow barley wine fans, you know how hard it is to get your hands on them. I have several I have collected over the last few months, and we do have a lot of awesome barley wine reviews coming up. So just sit tight. A lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline. But today, we're focusing on Masthead's Life Cycles. Label art on this is just a clean design. Kind of a dark forest green, kind of reminds me of the color of a pine forest. Very nice looking label, very clean. Nothing more to talk about there. So we'll get this cracked gently. And we will get this poured right into our stout glass, which is still the glass I use for my barley wines. It does work quite well. This can appears to be filled very much to the brim. So I'm probably, actually, yeah, that was okay. I did get a little bit spilled on the table, but that's fine. We'll clean it up. Yeah, this is pouring that classic caramelly color. And, you know, barley wines do tend to be very active in terms of carbonation. This one's no exception. So I don't expect this head to hold super long. Visually, yep, that classic caramelly color. Let's get right up over it for a sniff. Yeah, really no surprises here. It's big, bold, pungent. I could smell it as soon as I poured it a foot away from the edge of this glass. It's got a very bold, very intense aroma. The bourbon barrels jump immediately out at you, as is typical on a bourbon barrel-aged beer, and barley wines certainly as well. And this is one of those where it's not just bourbon on the nose. You get the underpinnings of the classic barley wine aroma as well. And everything is here is textbook. It's caramel, it's toffee, it's figs, it's plums, it's apricots. It smells like a rich, deep kind of caramelly dessert cobbler. It smells exactly as I would expect it to smell, and it looks right in the average color range. So everything about this screams textbook barley wine to me, with the bourbon barrel being the added thing of note. So the head is pretty much settled, already out of the way. Very typical for a barley wine. They don't tend to last too long because they are very effervescent, and they just collapse from underneath after they form. But we're going to jump right in for sip number one. Oh, that's a big one, guys. This is a big beer. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk is body and mouthfeel. It's a 14.2% ABV barley wine. It's got a very heavy body. It's very weighty. Feels substantive when you swallow it. Mouthfeel, a boatload of resistance. This one doesn't get creamy. It doesn't get foamy. It doesn't get silky. Really, you can just feel how thick this beer is as you agitate on the palate. So texture and weight, textbook for the style and the ABV range. It's top marks. Talking flavor now. This is a very good barley wine. No big surprises in how the bourbon and the classic barley wine flavor profile comes to me in this beer, but what I did not expect, and is quite rare, but I did get on this, and this was actually the very first flavor sensation I got when I swallowed. There's actually a nice healthy kick of bitters on the front of this. It's kind of cutting through compared to your average run-of-the-mill barley wine, so to speak. They don't normally have a particularly pronounced bitter profile. This one is an exception. I've only ever had a few like that, and it's very nice. For me personally, I think it adds just another dimension, another layer to an already extremely complex beer style, and I really like it when I get a kick of bitters. It doesn't have to be maintaining IPA intensity or anything like that, but having a nice sense of the bitters from the hops that they did use in the beer style is always nice to my palate, and it's very good on here. So yeah, hop bittering up front, and on this it doesn't taste, you know, piney or resinous or citrus or floral. It's very much an earthy hop profile of bitters that's cutting through, and I think that is the right choice in a barley wine. If you're going to use a heavier hand with the hops, use some hops that have flavor profiles that are going to complement the beer style. And something like this and earthy hop is exactly what the doctor ordered. So excellent, excellent hop selection here by Masthead. Immediately behind that, you get the bourbon barrels. Very, very nice. Very distinctly bourbon. Has this nice spirit sensation. There's a very nice warming sensation as it goes down. On this one, there is indeed a lot of the underlying caramel and toffee and caramelized sugars and molasses kind of elements popping in and out. It does lean a little more strongly on the caramel side than, say, molasses and toffee, but there's also a lot of caramelized sugar coming through. It does put me in mind again, and this is pretty typical as kind of the creme brulee sugars on the top of that dessert. That's kind of the sugary and caramelized notes I'm getting out of it, which is very, very nice. In terms of other flavor profiles coming from the beer itself, not just the barrels, it's the usual suspects. You've got apricots, you've got figs, you've got plums, you've got bits of raisins, you've got dates, you've got some prunes, and it's very much not the raw fruit. We're talking this is a dessert, a cobbler. You know, maybe somebody makes a sticky toffee pudding and has all of these rich fruit in there. That is exactly what's coming through to me. So it is very much a textbook, classic barley wine flavor coming through. Just the bourbon barrels is the added bonus. So as always, I'm going to jump back in for a second sip, let everything re-intensify, make sure I didn't miss anything, then we'll talk about the balance and the finish. Take two. Nice weight, nice body, nice warming sensation, nice kick of bitters up front. Big, 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 intense burst of bourbon. Slowly starts to back off. Once you hit about that 3-second mark, you really start to get tons of ebbing and flowing of the caramelization coming in to match with the bourbon. There's a lot of vanilla. There's a lot of nice earthiness that still lingers from the bitters, even though the bitter intensity really backs off come that 3 to 5 second mark. There's a ton of fig and a ton of plum and apricot coming into the back of this one in particular. Yes, there's raisins. There's even notes of grape. I mean, it's all in here. And as it goes longer and longer, these flavors are just ebbing and flowing and ebbing and flowing. It really does remind me very much of like a liquid form of a cobbler. It's absolutely delicious, guys. This is classic, classic barley wine. Didn't miss anything on first sip. It's all in here. This is a big, classic, well-done barley wine, just the added bonus that we get of the bourbon barrels, and indeed for my money, the extra intensity of bitters from the hops up front. Very, very nice. You don't get barley wines like this all the time. When you do, it's always a treat. So let's talk balance. Balance on a beer style like this, it's really a balance between the barrels and the beer base itself. I gotta say, for me, this is balanced perfectly. Classic, classic barley wine formula here. Bourbon barrels chosen very well. Don't know the barrels they used, but it's a very nice barrel selection to pair with this specific beer. Excellent flavor profile, and they work very symbiotically together. And then, of course, because it's got a little heavier hand with the hops, that extra bitters up front, that's also balanced beautifully. You don't always get that in a barley wine. I love it when it's in there, but it's not over the top. It's not trying to be barley wine IPA. That's not it, or IPA barley wine. It's just a barley wine with a little heavier hand to give some kick, some oomph from the bitters. It's an added bonus element, and that is part of the balance in this, and I absolutely love it. It's enough that's in there that you notice it quite clearly, but it's not over the top, and it does not detract from the base beer style itself. Very, very well done. In terms of the finish, this is a long one. It's a big 14.2% ABV on a barrel-aged barley wine. It's extremely long. We're talking well in excess of 2 minutes on each sip. As is typical with a barley wine, there's no dryness at all on the palate. It's very wet, it's very round, it's very full, and it really sticks and coats to the palate. It's a thick, thick beer. What I'm left with on the very, very end, flavor profile as it dissipates to nothingness, is still a strong sense of bourbon from the barrels and a big, big undercurrent of caramel. And then kind of the toffee elements actually come more into their own on the very end of the finish. So you taste distinctly caramel, like caramel candy, like you dip an apple in, plus buttered toffees, such as you might get on like buttered toffee flavored Crunch and Munch, if you're a fan of that snack. I love it. It reminds me of that. So you get this bourbon, distinct caramel, distinct toffee. That's where it ends on the end of the finish before it finally dissipates to nothing. Absolute home run of a barley wine here, guys. I love it. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, count my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Masthead Brewing Company's Life Cycles, a bourbon barrel-aged barley wine that clocked in at 14.2% ABV. Masthead is based in Cleveland, Ohio. So yeah, guys, this was another very, very good barley wine I got from Tavour, another great beer from Masthead. This one was one of those rare ones that actually had a little bit of a nice bitterness, a little hop bite up front, which is not common at all. And it added to the depth and experience of this beer. Otherwise, I would say this was a classic, perfectly executed barley wine in every sense of the word. Then you got the added bonus of the bourbon barrels, which were spectacular on this beer. And then we got the added bonus of the hop bitters up front. So yeah, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful beer. I really, really enjoyed what they did with this. This was the classic recipe with just a couple new additions that really put it over the top for me. So all in all, this beer did fantastic across the board. Indeed, only a single category that did not get a perfect score on this beer. So we're going to jump straight to that one. And the beer category on this one in question is the head and the retention. Now, barley wines typically aren't going to form the best head in general. And if they do, they're normally going to collapse relatively quickly. They are just very, very active in terms of carbonation, and they tend to collapse their own heads from the bottom up within a relatively quick amount of time from the time you get it poured. This one held on okay. I would say in general, it was average. It was average for how it formed and how long it stuck around. Not super low, not super high, just middle of the road. So I did rank it thus, and it does get a 5 out of 10 for the head and retention, but that does leave a perfect 10 out of 10 in the 9 remaining categories. That is aroma, taste, body, mouthfeel, finish, appearance, balance, feeling/intangible. That's my subjective thoughts category. And finally, example of style. So the total score on Masthead Brewing Company's Life Cycles is a 95 out of 100. Guys, you know my perspective on this. Head and retention, it's really important on some beer styles. A barley wine is not one of those styles. In my estimation, you could call this beer as near as perfect a barley wine as you could get. It is what it is. The head did what it did. I don't consider that a personal big knock, and it certainly didn't detract from the beer drinking experience. Indeed, I really, really enjoyed this one. Classic, perfectly executed barley wine recipe, wonderful bourbon barrel additions, nice hop bitters and bite up front. It was truly a great barley wine drinking experience. Folks, that is today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.